The film starts with three guys hunting in the forest. Dale, one of them, goes off on his own to track down his target. Soon after, he spots his target and prepares to shoot. But out of nowhere, a big bald guy shows up and shoves Dale off a cliff, killing him instantly. This bald guy is Ryan Varrett, a former cop seeking revenge for his family's murder years ago, and Dale was involved in it. After dealing with Dale, Ryan heads to a small town named Hope, which is not your average town. It's controlled by a violent biker gang that even frightens the sheriff. Despite knowing this, Ryan drives into town anyway. Once there, he goes into a gas station to pick up supplies and gather information about where he can stay. Herbie, the owner, pointed him towards the lone motel in town. Surprisingly, the motel, managed by a young lady named Darcy, had no guests, as it was uncommon for outsiders to venture into Hope. Darcy herself couldn't fathom why Ryan risked coming to such a perilous town. However, Ryan simply stated he had business there. Meanwhile, FBI agent Frank is coordinating a strategy with his team to track down Dale, who, besides being a murderer, is also a rapist. But during their discussion, another agent interrupts with news of Dale's demise. The scene then shifts to a flashback of Ryan's time as a cop. He was enjoying a party with loved ones when a gang of criminals barged in, unleashing gunfire on everyone present, including Ryan and his family. Drake Santiago, the leader of the attackers, carried out the offense due to harboring resentment towards the law enforcement officers who previously incarcerated him. Thus, he was resolute in seeking vengeance by eliminating those officers and their families. Among his targets was Ryan, a police officer. However, miraculously, Ryan survived despite sustaining gunshot wounds. Presently, Ryan was driving through the town when he encountered some motorcycles parked in front of a building. Shortly after, a member of a biker gang emerged from the building, disturbed by a barking dog. Reacting impulsively, he drew his firearm with the intention of silencing the dog. Fortunately, before he could act, Ryan intervened to prevent him and instead taught him a lesson by physically confronting him. The noise caused by Ryan's intervention alerted other gang members inside the building. The leader of the gang present was none other than Drake himself. However, Drake appeared to have no recollection of Ryan's face, which wasn't surprising considering the numerous people he had eliminated. Despite Ryan confronting one of his gang members, Drake chose to release him, as he was preoccupied with pressing matters. Nonetheless, he harbored suspicions about Ryan, thus instructing his younger brother, Rexo, to keep a close watch on him. The following day, Rexo updated Drake about a club owner who refused to pay the security fee. Incensed, Drake challenged the owner to a single-round boxing match. If the owner emerged victorious, Drake vowed to waive the security fee permanently. Despite Drake's advanced age, he displayed formidable strength, effortlessly defeating the club owner. In a display of mercy, Drake decided to let the owner off the hook. Drake had a vested interest in keeping the man alive, since he still owed him money, and Drake wouldn't profit from a dead debtor. Extortion wasn't the gang's sole source of income. They also engaged in methamphetamine distribution, with Rexo overseeing the lab operations. Alongside managing the lab, Rexo had the additional responsibility of monitoring Ryan. That night, Rexo visited Darcy's motel to inquire about the whereabouts of a large, bald individual named Ryan. Despite Rexo's initial polite inquiry, Darcy refused to cooperate, prompting Rexo to resort to threats. He warned her of dire consequences if she didn't disclose Ryan's location, delivering the message with a menacing demeanor. Ryan, who happened to be present at the motel, overheard Rexo's threats toward Darcy. In response, Ryan intervened using the only method he knew, violence. Witnessing Rexo endure such a brutal beating, Darcy cautioned Ryan that the individual he was assaulting happened to be the younger sibling of Drake, the leader of a circle gang. Darcy emphasized that Drake would seek revenge if he discovered his brother had been subjected to torture. However, Ryan remained indifferent to the warning. Instead, he escorted Rexo to the front of the gang's laboratory and secured him to a vehicle. Subsequently, he initiated a collision, causing the laboratory to erupt in flames. Rexo perished in the explosion, and the laboratory was obliterated, leaving Ryan content with the outcome. Drake and the gang swiftly noticed the explosion and hastened to the scene. Despite their grief, they could only helplessly watch the inferno, except for Drake, who seethed with rage upon learning of his brother's demise. Shortly thereafter, the sheriff and one of his deputies arrived to investigate the incident. Drake and his cohorts remained present, and upon spotting the sheriff, Drake approached him and issued a menacing threat. Drake warned the sheriff that if he dared to intervene, he would eradicate the sheriff's entire family. Intimidated, the sheriff refrained from challenging Drake's threat, believing that allowing the gang free rein might prevent further violence in the town. The following day, Ryan resumed his activities by targeting a gang's truck scheduled to transport methamphetamine to another city. Ryan discreetly trailed the convoy before puncturing the truck's tire, compelling the driver to exit the vehicle. Seizing the opportunity, Ryan ambushed the driver, slamming his head against the car door before detonating the truck. The destruction of the truck caught the attention of a gang member who promptly informed Drake. Drake erupted in anger upon learning that the truck, loaded with a significant quantity of methamphetamine, had been destroyed, resulting in substantial financial losses. Drake desired to apprehend and bring the culprit responsible for the explosion before him, suspecting Ryan's involvement. To substantiate his suspicions, Drake instructed his men to fetch Kirby to their headquarters. Upon Kirby's arrival, Drake tasked him with aiding in the investigation of Ryan's identity and culpability. Drake made it clear that if Ryan were proven guilty, he would not hesitate to execute him. Overwhelmed by fear, Kirby reluctantly complied with Drake's demands. On the same day, Kirby commenced his investigation into Ryan, starting with inspecting Ryan's parked car near the motel in hopes of uncovering relevant information. However, while snooping around the vehicle, Ryan emerged from the motel and caught Kirby in the act, compelling Kirby to abandon his inquiry. Awkwardly smiling, Kirby invited Ryan for a drink at his nearby residence. Despite Kirby's attempt to divert suspicion, Ryan remained vigilant, questioning Kirby's earlier search of his car upon reaching Kirby's house. Kirby confessed that Drake had tasked him solely with gathering intel on Ryan. As Kirby finished speaking, they heard a motorcycle pull up outside the house, signaling the arrival of Crab, one of Drake's associates, who had come to confront Ryan. Their altercation was brief, with Ryan emerging victorious, opting to release Crab afterward. Meanwhile, Drake conducted her own inquiry by meeting with the sheriff. From their discussion, Drake discovered that Ryan was a former police officer who had resigned from the force following the murder of his family. Expressing gratitude for the information, Drake rewarded the sheriff with some money. Later that night, Drake and his men visited Kirby's residence while the owner slept. Disappointed by Kirby's unreliability, even in a simple task like gathering information about a bald man, Drake decided to punish him for his incompetence, instructing Crab to eliminate Kirby. The news of Kirby's demise reached Ryan the following morning, leaving him certain that it was the Drake gang responsible for the killing. After all, who else but them would have committed such a heinous act? With no time to spare, Ryan headed to one of Drake's establishments, where he engaged in a physical confrontation with all of his adversaries. Subsequently, he abducted Crab and confined him in the trunk of his car before executing him and disposing of the body near the gang's headquarters. Drake was incensed by the loss of his favorite accomplice, prompting him to mobilize his remaining men and arm them for a retaliatory mission to track down Ryan. Later that night, while at the motel, Darcy heard suspicious sounds outside, prompting her to arm herself with a shotgun and prepare to confront any intruders. However, Ryan, who had anticipated the arrival of his enemies, instructed Darcy to seek shelter behind a reception desk. Shortly after, the front door creaked open, allowing Drake's men to enter the room. Ryan strategically waited until they approached him closely before instructing Darcy to switch off the lights. The room plunged into darkness as gunfire erupted, lasting for several seconds. When Darcy restored the lights, she discovered all the gang members lying lifeless in the room. Remarkably, Ryan emerged from the ordeal unscathed. Nonetheless, he recognized the perilous situation and swiftly evacuated with Darcy. Unfortunately, they failed to realize that adversaries were lying in wait around the motel, leading to an ambush that left Ryan beaten unconscious. Upon regaining consciousness, Ryan found himself face to face with Drake. Both he and Darcy had been transported to the gang's headquarters, where Ryan found his arms bound to a chair, restricting his movement. Drake ominously informed him of her intent to execute both Ryan and Darcy. However, before executing her, he expressed his intention to indulge in her physically. Following this proclamation, he delegated the task of torturing Ryan to one of his henchmen while he withdrew to the rear chamber. Consequently, the ordeal of torture commenced. The assailant subjected Ryan to severe beatings, deriving apparent pleasure from the act. Unexpectedly, Ryan managed to free himself from the restraints, enabling him to retaliate against his assailant, rendering him unconscious. With the threat subdued, Ryan embarked on a search for Darcy within the confines of the ship, encountering Drake's men instead. They swiftly encircled Ryan, employing their refined combat techniques in an attempt to overpower him. Despite their concerted efforts, Ryan proved too formidable to defeat. After thoroughly scouring the ship, Ryan eventually located Darcy. Unlike Ryan, she was bound and gagged with duct tape covering her mouth. After freeing Darcy, they commenced their search for an escape route from the ship. However, it was evident that Drake wouldn't permit Ryan to flee unchecked. Recognizing that the inevitable confrontation had arrived, Ryan instructed Darcy to depart while he confronted Drake. Before the battle commenced, Drake recounted how he recollected Ryan as the former police officer whose family he had massacred prior to assuming control in Hope. Drake had long believed Ryan to be deceased. Following this revelation, the long-awaited duel between them ensued. Despite exchanging blows, Ryan's offensive maneuvers proved superior, enabling him to floor Drake. Yet, just as Ryan believed victory was imminent, Drake arose, brandishing a knife with intent to attack Ryan from behind. Thankfully, Agent Frank from the FBI arrived in the nick of time, fatally shooting Drake before he could execute his plan against Ryan. During this period, the FBI had arrived in Hope with the objective of dismantling Drake's oppressive gang, which had terrorized the locals. Frank opted against apprehending Ryan, recognizing the continued need for a figure like him within law enforcement. Consequently, Ryan departed from the town, pledging to reunite with Frank in the future. In the movie's conclusion, Ryan is depicted raiding a location and engaging in gunfire with a group of individuals inside. It becomes apparent that remnants of Drake's network still linger, comprised of individuals who had played a role in the murder of Ryan's family.